Okay, you've got questions, I've got answers. Q2A, then PT Part 2 of Shit It's the Fan. Here's my thing. I wish I could answer your guys' questions much faster. Is it a combination of me being long-winded and just really damn good questions that are complex? And this is what I appreciate about you guys here in the Prepared Mind Network is you don't ask questions like, should I buy rice or beans? Right? You're asking complicated questions about complex topics having to do with a very complex world, and I try and do a good job. But, so I'm going to give you some credit for the length of the videos, which apparently you guys like. You like long videos where you get to sit down and think about ideas and concepts rather than just being hammered with sound bites. Bam, bam, bam on everything. Anyways, let's get into it and get through this as quickly as possible so you can return to your regularly scheduled life. Gary writes, regarding the repost on preppers being hunted, I would like to hear some of your shorts on the plan of action thoughts. As always, I appreciate your unique perspectives. Thank you, Gary. I do enjoy doing the Prepared Mind shorts, and as they come to me, what I'll do is I'll write an idea on a little post-it, and then I'll try and get to the short. But I don't want to encumber and overburden everyone with too much information, and I get yelled at for that. But I'll continue to do shorts, and as I see things develop, I'll talk about them. With regard to preppers being hunted, that is something we're all individually responsible for, knowing our area and keeping on top of it and understanding or trying to have at least a very pointed and educated guess as to what the locals would do, in a variety of situations. Not easy, but as long as we're ahead of the game, you're ahead of the game. If you win the foot race by a mile, you win. If you win by half a step, you win. It's still a gold medal. Being a prepper puts you in the lead. Okay, Bill writes, when shit hits the fan, when do you pull the trigger? I never went to war, never fired upon a human being, and the first time will take a lot of thought. That thought could take my own life if not made swiftly and allowing somebody with evil intentions to get close enough to take my life for my preps. All things considered, will I be a murderer or a defender? At some point, people will have to die for their actions. What will be the justifiable action to drop them like a dirty diaper? Well, here's the deal, Bill. This is, once again, it's situational. If you have the mindset, I have a right to live, and that preempts someone else's right to steal from me or murder me. What you're going to have to decide for yourself the same way I will or anyone else will, and this exists whether or not you've been in combat or you've been trained or you are a veteran or a police officer. You have to accept responsibility for yourself and then understand that person taking the action is responsible for themselves. If you're in a quiet neighborhood and someone's walking down the street and they just turn and walk up through your yard, you're going to have to determine, is that person threatening my life? Do I have cause? Is it justifiable belief on my part that I'm about to die or that they're about to take an action that could result in my death? And stealing your food and shit it's the fan will cause your death. That is murder by theft. And it is every bit as murderous as murder with a knife or a gun. If someone says, I want all your food, I want half of your food, they're saying, I want you to die, and I want to live. It's like being robbed of money. Well, just give them your money. Well, if you don't, it's not about the money, it's about your life. It's all about your life when it comes down to it. So, if this situation or scenario we just painted for you, Bill, right? If it's a quiet neighborhood, shit has hit the fan, but not much is really going on. There's not gunshots, there's not fires, there's not screaming and yelling, right? Odds are this person isn't going to be as violent as you might be fearful of. Now, if there is on a daily basis 1 or 2 or 3 people getting killed in the vicinity, a quarter-mile area around you, and there's the occasional gunshots and houses catching on fire every couple of days, and things aren't getting better, they're continuing to persist as a shit it's the fan scenario, and some jackass is coming down the street, and he looks over at you makes a determination and makes a right angle turn to come up your driveway, you may want to be concerned. You may go, considering what's going on around here in the state of affairs, I feel that my life is being threatened. You could say, stop! And if he doesn't stop, right, if he's got a weapon, if he doesn't stop, if he's taking aggressive action, as in he's running to dive behind a bush, right? In other words, he's taking a more protected offensive posture and position. If there's more than one, if they split up and approach you from different angles, there's a number of offensive characteristics that people can demonstrate that tell you they're going to fuck you up. And if you're having people dying and things going wrong, you can pretty much guess that they're not your friends. And so you have to do that. That's when you say, when you pull the trigger, literally pull the trigger. Do you have to wait until you're assaulted in person with a knife in your face? Do you have to let them fire first? Or are you Han Solo in the cantina going, this guy is going to kill me, and so I have to put myself, right? And he pulls his gun out and shoots first and kills Guido, Guido, whatever its name was, in self-defense, even though you don't have to be shot at first, in other words. It's situational. And if you believe your life is threatened, then you believe your life is threatened. It is not murder, it is self-defense. But you don't have to be in imminent danger or injured in order to start defending yourself. Another thing you don't do is you don't stand in the open and go, okay, what's he want? You have a right to defend your life and take a defensive posture. Get behind a wall, a defensive wall of cinder blocks or sandbags or dirt, and demand them to stop. This idea of firing a warning shot, it works. That gets people's attention like a motherfucker. It does. And if they continue to come at you after firing a warning shot over their head, well, they're pretty serious about killing you and getting to you, don't you think? So there's your answer. It's up to you. It's up to your morality. It's up to your mind. It's up to an understanding. Non-preppers will have very little understanding until they learn from experience. As a prepper, you have a chance to put some forethought into it and understand your responsibilities and your rights as a human being, as a living creature. Maximus Johnson writes, question, John, how do you suggest one disposes of human waste, especially feces, over and over, long-term, in a suburban environment when the sewer is backed up? I already know about the 5-gallon bucket with the toteable toilet lid, which is good for short duration, yet seems inadequate long-term in the situation I described. The feces in the bucket has to go somewhere. Yes, it does, and we'll get to that here. I'm going to tell you how to handle it. And I will tell you that in a high-density population area, apartments, suburbia, cities, that's a lot of shit. And the infrastructure that's in place now, sewer system, takes the sewage, and it runs it through pipes, sometimes dozens of miles away, where it's processed, where it's water's extracted, the solid waste are composted. Right? It's handled on an industrial scale, much the way our food is grown on an industrial scale to feed us because of our high population. When we come to shit, it's the fan, and it's time to take care of things on an individual basis in a non-industrial manner, you need to learn biology and understand it. The bucket with the lid, the toilet, you can use that, I'm going to say, for 2 days. Family of 4 for 2 days. Urinating, you don't go in the bucket. You urinate on a tree if you're a man, or you go squat on a bush if you're a girl. If you have to go number 2, right? Number 2 goes in the bucket. What do you do, right? There's a couple of issues. You have disease and you have smell. And then you have the long-term problem, which you bring up, and I'm glad you did. What can you put in there that helps the situation? There's an idea, concept. Look into composting toilets and the technology around them. People are now using composting toilets without shit hitting the fan. What they do is they go number 2, and there's a separator unit that separates the pee off. That's why I say pee on a bush, pee on a tree. When you mix the moisture in with the poop, it keeps it wet longer, and disease and stuff festers, gets worse. It's sewage. If it's just a pile of crap, and I am being a little bit crude, but that's what we're dealing with here is crap. How do you break it down? How does nature process all of the crap? Well, bacteria break it down. So you put composted leaves, you put pine needles, you put a little bit of dirt in there, and then, hey, guess what? You get a stick and you stir it up a little. You break it up so that microbes can get in there and do their job and break it down. And then you put a covering of whatever you want, straw, again, leaves. The composting toilets use coconut fiber, right? That's it, because it keeps a lot of air in there. There's microbes, and the microbes or bacteria eat and break things down further. It's kind of how we do it in our stomachs. And I know it's kind of a long answer to a good question, but it's what I do. Our stomach breaks our food down by using enzymes that we produce and bacteria which live inside our gut. The whole flora and fauna thing, right? And then our stomach rolls it around and our intestines roll it around, and eventually waste products are added and out it goes. Well, there's still nutrients in there, and there's still bacteria that comes through us and from us, and it's inside the poop. And the poop will continue to break down on its own, but keeping it wet and moist doesn't cause it to break down. In a composting environment, it'll dry out, and the bacteria will do their job and eat, right? And also the bucket will stay warm because it's above ground, right? And warmth, if it gets too cold, the bacteria slow down. If it gets, really hot, then things stink. Why does that shit stink? It's, hot. It's a hot turd it's a turd in the sunshine, and boy, does it stink. Yeah, because it's really active with those bacteria. So keeping it warm helps that process. But once you're done, cover it in some composting material, and that'll keep the smell in. It'll keep the heat because it's generating heat. These bacteria just having a party in there. They're having a party, creates more heat, and the hotter it is, the more active they get, the faster it breaks down. That's composting. That's why you can take a composting heap of just leaves, and after a couple of months you roll it around and steam will just come out of there, and it's hot. It's because of what bacteria do. So look into composting toilets to understand how your composting bucket would work. And then by the time it's done composting, you just go put it in a pile, over on the edge of the yard, and just turn it upside down, bam, you got a pile of compost. Just leave it. Don't fuck with it. You're doing your thing the next day, and you're going to continue to do that. In a couple of weeks, that will be dirt. Not shit. It'll be dirt. Okay, moving along. Over and over and over and over and over. In fact, you can end up using the dirt from the first bucket probably in a couple of months as composting material you start scooping in to cover up the smell of the new poop. Okie dokie. I know. Let's talk some shit. Jeff writes, Mr. John, with all this crap, here we go, crap again. Crap going on with these investigations on the theft, everything the DOJ, Horowitz, Burr, and others are going to go everywhere. Could they just be trying to convince the American people that they are really trying to get to the bottom of this and start indicting, prosecuting, and perp-walking the treasonous, traitorous asses to Gitmo? I know that everything is about timing, like I've mentioned before, but starting to think otherwise. And last thing, have you went and checked the X-22 report? Like I mentioned to you many times before, they seem to have all the inside info on exactly what's happening, any coming up. Here's my deal with X-22. He likes this Q stuff, and I've talked about Q. I don't believe that the Q is accurate because it's been promising disclosure and exposure, and it's been promising perp walks and arrests and prosecution, and it's going to happen next week. It's going to happen next week. It's coming. And I've been waiting and waiting, just like you and everyone else. We've been waiting. I don't buy X-22. I like Dave. I listened to him for a long time, even before I started the Prepared Mind channel. I listened to X-22 to get information. Get the information, draw your own conclusions. Get more than just his information, like I recommend you get more than just my information. Because my information comes from a certain area and it goes through the John filter, right? X-22 and others do the same thing. And if you get too focused and too narrow and you want to believe a specific thing, then you start shutting out other stuff. This Q idea discounts facts and reality. It's coming next week. But the reality is, for years we've been told that. So I now need to take that into account. Is it possible that we're going to see indictments and prosecutions and people being arrested? It's possible. What evidence do we have that it's going to happen? I would say after a week of it happening, there's a good chance it's going to continue to happen. If it's not happening, hey, what are the odds? Not really good because I haven't seen it yet. Arrest somebody, damn it. Right? I want to see their treasonous, traitorous asses sent to Gitmo too. I want to see them paraded in a cage down the street so everyone can throw rotten tomatoes at them. Because I think they are treasonous. And everyone needs to see them, and they need to be exposed for what they are. Yes, on December 11th or 12th, whatever day it is, they're going to release the Inspector General's report. Great! Now what? It's 500 pages. Well, Mueller had dozens and hundreds of pages of shit. Is it going to be a case laid out, naming names? Not just naming names, but including the crimes they committed. And I don't want to hear, well, yeah, you know, that's the Attorney General and the Department of Justice. And if I were to go driving down a sidewalk in Washington, D.C., so it's a federal crime, you see, running over old ladies and school children, I would be arrested, charged, prosecuted, tried, and imprisoned, I would suspect, within just a matter of weeks. I don't hear, well, we're going to release the report on the 19th, or the 11th or 12th. And by the 19th, before Christmas, we're going to be arresting people. They're not saying we're going to do our job and start arresting and prosecuting people. They're saying we're going to release the report. So, I can release a report too. If you're not going to do anything about it, what good is it? So, hope for the best, plan for the worst. We hope that they do their jobs, but I haven't seen a lot of indication that they're willing to go beyond talking about crimes being committed, admitting crimes have been committed, right? Director Comey, FBI Director Comey? Yeah, Hillary committed a crime, so what? We're not going to prosecute. They have to be willing to do more than just generate a report, which has taken years to do. We know through independent researchers, government leaks, and the government's unleaked public documents that crimes have been committed by tons of people in the Obama administration, the Democrat Party, the CIA, the FBI, the State Department, the Department of Justice. The entire federal bureaucracy is full of people committing crimes. It's not a pretty picture when you think about it. Yet we haven't seen any high-level arrest. Oh, that guy's been flipped. Okay. Cook them on both sides. Flip them and cook them. Give me this flipped shit. I want to see some stuff happen. I want to see law being enforced. I want to see criminals going to prison. We want justice and equality. We want to feel like this country is under control and that the government understands the Constitution exists and will abide it and their oaths. Jeff, I'm not mad at you, by the way. I'm just being John. Yeah. We could get it. This could be a giant fuck you America, or it could be a giant fuck you deep state. I hope they arrest Adam Schiff and say, you lying, treasonous, traitorous bastard. Poof. Whether or not they've taken the vote to impeach Trump or not, if he's committed a crime, arrest him. Biden? Did you commit a crime? Arrest him. I don't care if he's a presidential candidate or not. Proclaiming your candidacy as a president or any other political figure doesn't exempt you from being prosecuted for corruption, graft, theft, bribery, etc. I'm going to be a presidential candidate. John for president. You can't arrest me for any crime because it's for personal gain on the other person's part. And it's politicized. Yeah, everything's politicized. Grow the fuck up. Too bad. You're going to jail. Jackasses. Okay. Anyways, thank you, Jeff. Great question. Billy the Goat writes, with the election in Virginia, there is a real chance of the Democrats banning assault rifles. defined as any semi-automatic rifle capable of accepting magazines larger than 10 rounds and not grandfathering in any existing owned rifles. This is where we're at in our country, Billy. Ex post facto. Does anyone even talk about it anymore? In other words, you can't create a law today that criminalizes your acts of the past or things you've done in the past, including the ownership of property. You can't outlaw the ownership of a car and say, well, it's illegal to own a car. You have one, you're going to jail, and we're stealing your car. Right? There's principles of law and nature that should be followed. They're universal. When governments stop doing that, it's a symptom of a very deep level of despotism and tyranny and lawlessness. And they need this, and it shows you how evil government is becoming. And I know people don't like to say, well, it's America, it's a great government, and we just have a few problems. No, it is an evil government when it's prescribing these types of laws. And then they say, well, if you don't like the law, it's up to the courts to decide. No, it's up to you fuckers in the legislature to decide. Is this constitutional or not? Not just pass things and then say, can we get it by the judges? No. You violated the Constitution by passing a law, creating a statute that you're going to ram down people's throat. You're going to force them to accept your decision. Well, it has to do with majority rule, John, and democracy. No. My right to live, own property, pursue happiness, breathe air, defend myself, travel, make money, keep my money. Those are rights that are above the Constitution. You see, it goes God. He made people. He gave them rights. They used those rights to create the Constitution, which creates the government. You see, my rights created the Constitution, which creates the government. So how can the government say it's more important than me and my rights? It's kind of a hierarchy thing, and it's really simple to understand. My rights cannot be taken away by something I created or something someone else created, right? It's an act of war. It is an act of a violation of God's law, nature's law, constitutional law, common law. But that's where we're at in our social, political, economic, military, global system. Right? What they're saying is they're willing to go to war. We're getting closer to going to war. Shit hitting the fan. That's what we're getting closer to. So, I'm going to finish up with Wichita Joe. Writes, greetings, Brother John. Greetings, Joe. What would a middle and employed lower class rebellion against the elites in government look like? Should it first take place on a city-county level instead of, like Hong Kong, instead of expending energy and resources on a national level? Also, history confirms there is a point where telling your children, I'm sorry this happened on our watch, is inadequate. Are we there? Thank you for making good men and women better. Joe, it is my pleasure to find good men and women and make them better and help them make themselves better. It's all a personal choice, whether I travel west to east or east to west, it's what I do. This topic, when do we rebel? People in all times have always been pushed too far when they finally rebel. And when they finally rebel or fight back, it comes as a result of years, if not decades, of abuse. History confirms this. Some people are absolutely destroyed. The people of Russia were absolutely and totally destroyed by the Soviet Union when the Bolsheviks took and created their own military and then turned that military on the people and just absolutely crushed them and killed them and hunted them down relentlessly using the industrial power of what Russia had. And it decimated their economy and their currency. It decimated the people. Ultimately, it decimated their will to prosper and thrive because there is no incentive to do work because it would be taken from you. Now, and if you talked bad about the state, they would kill you. They would arrest you. They would kill your family. They would arrest your family. They would split your family up. They would do any number of things, including every bad thing you can think of. Murder, torture, rape, absolute theft, destruction of your name. I mean, everything. They would destroy. And it's not just the Soviet Union. It's the church has done that. Governments throughout Europe have done that to their people and people of other nations in an effort to subjugate and destroy them for their own gain. When you wait too long, that can happen. In an industrialized world where power can be shifted from one side to the other, you can't win. In the case of the United States, I believe that there's two factions within the military, or two lines of thought, rather. One is freedom and the other is communism. And they would be battling each other as much as we would be battling each other on the street. Putting together a national campaign to use martial force to take back the country on the federal level, not going to happen. On the state level, probably not going to happen. On the county level, it's possible. On the city level, it's definitely possible. It would require not a lot of coordination, but rather a level of disgust by the people who have had it with government. And so week one, it would be organic. It would have to be organic. It would be torches and pitchforks, daddy's shotgun showing up saying, we've had enough, you're all fired. We don't need the city. We don't need the county. And in some cases, rural states, we don't need the state. The state has violated our rights, violated our Constitution, violated common law, natural law, God's law, all laws. They have been lawless in their pursuit of power. And people can think that without having to organize and have meetings and secret meetings and parties. And I got to tell you that back prior to the American Revolution, the use of secrecy and brotherhood within the Masonic lodges, that's the Freemasons, of which George Washington and many, if not most, of the revolutionary patriots known as the Founding Fathers were either Masons or steeped in philosophy that was Masonic in nature. In other words, the Masons used secrecy to organize to fight against tyranny. And it is the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Federalist Papers are full of ideas about freedom. Freedom's a good thing, and it made our country great. And it's the loss of those freedoms that has caused our country to start falling. The conspiracies that have occurred, the greed, theft, and corruption, right? That is what controls our country. It's multi-billion-dollar corporations, dynastic families that don't want freedom. That's why our nation is failing. Greed and corruption within banks that buy politicians. That's why it's failing. To point to the Lions Club or the Elks Club or the Masons or the International Order of Oddfellows or any other group, the Moose Lodge or Seroptimus, they're not the ones taking over the world. It's the people with the really big names and the really big buildings that have all the power that control the government. Those are the ones that are the evil bastards. But it started with men who thought about freedom and their families that supported them. And they said, we're pledging our lives, our families, and our fortunes. Much like President Trump is putting his life on the line, his family on the line, and his fortune on the line by going up against the deep state. It's a very admirable thing in a lot of ways. If you think about it, would you do it? If you were a billionaire, would you do it? Trump believes, I suppose, that it's so bad that if he doesn't do it, because he's got the means and the wherewithal, that he would lose his life, his family's life, and his fortune if he didn't become president. Enough said about that. It's an interesting idea. Think about it. Would you do it? So why would he? Man's hated, right? This idea of an organic revolt, it can happen. It's happened in the past in certain areas where the corruption got so bad that people took back their principality, their local area, their county. It can happen here, and a crackdown, an absolute smackdown of people, the declaration of martial law by state, local governments, the abuse of people like happened in Katrina. Maybe next time, hey, something bad happens, the people say, you're not taking our fucking guns and you're not corralling us, and they fight back. The police are a very small number of us. The reason America is not a lawless, on-fire, third world disaster, not yet anyways, is because there aren't enough police to do that to us. There's not enough military to do that. And there's enough good military and police that would say, we're not doing that. But if they tried it and they cracked down and they started abusing people like they did in New Orleans, which was a very corrupt police department, and there are many corrupt police departments, the people have a right and a duty to stand up for themselves, and they may do as Wichita Joe suggests, right? Kind of put together a middle and lower class rebellion and say, fuck you, in other words. That's what John Hancock did, by the way, by writing his name extra big on the Declaration of Independence. John Hancock was essentially, this is how my 7th grade teacher taught it to us. And he wasn't what I would call a stalwart conservative, even though I like Bill. I won't use his last name. He said it's essentially the middle finger to the king. Specifically, he didn't want King George to have to put his glasses on to read John Hancock's name. That's saying, you won't have any excuse. This is who I am and this is what I'm saying. Oh, by the way, John Hancock was a Freemason. George Washington was a Freemason. Sam Adams was a Freemason. There's many, many patriots. Paul Revere. Many, 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 many of them. It's interesting, is it not, that they are lampooned. They are attacked viciously as being some sort of conspiracy that's out to destroy the nation. These are the guys that created the nation and gave us freedom and a constitution and helped destroy the concept that the king always gets what he wants. You see, it's another red herring. That was a red herring. It was a distraction. You've been duped if you believe they're the bad guys. The bad guys have always been the bankers and the elites and the aristocrats who are powerful and then they become abusive and tyrannical. Organizations that promote the concept of freedom are not evil. Doesn't mean there's not assholes in the groups, but you know, this I didn't want to turn this into a that kind of a talk, but rather don't be fooled by propaganda and misdirection. And by all means, don't go to a meeting in your town that's public where they say, we're going to put together a rebellion. Right? They're going to lock the doors behind you and arrest you all. Because they're going to consider that seditious, rebellious, illegal, and treasonous. But it wouldn't surprise me if the government gets out of hand. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if the government gets out of hand, gets abusive. And we've seen lots of abuse now from politicians with their attitudes, right, Mr. Schiff? Down to city commissioners and chiefs of police and sheriff's departments that are more than willing to openly abuse people, intimidate them, and use force, including deadly force, to get what they want. I'm not just talking about Waco or Ruby Ridge. I'm talking about the guy you went to school with 40 years ago. He's now an asshole and he's out of his fucking mind crazy on a local level. And people they'll just show up and go, fuck it, right? They go bang on their neighbors' doors and say, grab your torches and pitchforks. We're going to City Hall and we're taking this fucker back. That is possible. Is that going to make things better? I don't know. Will it stop the abuse? I don't know. Will it send a message to the government and the government backs off? I don't know, and I doubt it. But that is the world we're starting to get to. So Wichita Joe's question, what does it take? How did we do it before? What can happen? What are the consequences? These are all questions we need to think about ahead of time, and we have to do it in our own little heads, in our own little lives, quietly, and think about it. Because, you know, you can't go anywhere now and talk about anything because you're being watched and listened to by everyone. And I'm not promoting the idea of rebellion. I'm not. I'm not discounting that it won't happen, is what I'm saying. But before you join anything, understand it. That goes for anything. Political party, softball team. Understand what they're doing. Understand what they're selling and saying. You know, with prepping, what is it about? Food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense, having a plan. When everyone else loses their shit, you can defend yourself and survive and get through it. That's what I'm selling or promoting. I'm not promoting lawlessness. I'm not promoting tyranny. I'm promoting self-responsibility. Responsibility for self. I'm promoting the idea of accountability. You break the law, right? A real law where there's a damaged party, like our government does, or rather participants within government do, as well as, you know, drug dealers and other bad people. Yeah, you commit a murder, go to jail. I'm promoting that. I'm not promoting lawlessness. I'm not promoting a two-tier justice system where if you have a certain name, you get away with all the crimes you wish. But the idea of a middle and lower class rebellion against the government, I think it can happen on a local level. If you're in an area where it happens and you don't particularly care for the people and they do it anyways and they're successful, you know, there's going to be blowback and consequences for everybody for everything that's done. The people that signed the Declaration of Independence, if they were caught, they paid a heavy price. Even the ones that weren't caught paid a heavy price. The price for the Declaration of Independence and the American Revolution was a heavy price, not only in the lives of soldiers and people, but the people who didn't fight. The country itself was put under siege and overrun by British troops. They were taxed heavily. They were forced to quarter soldiers in their homes. People were paid bribes or payout money in order to snitch on others. It was a terrible time to be alive. It's remembered in glorious terms because of the freedom that was won, because of the philosophy and hard work and sacrifice made by the men and women back then. But it wasn't a glorious thing to live through. It was extremely trying times. It was shit hitting the fan. It was birth pains, you know, and it birthed a nation. And I believe it was Franklin Roosevelt was asked when they came out of their little meeting, you know, what have you done or what have you given us in the form of government? And he says, a republic, madam, if you can keep it. Right? It was interesting. You know, he didn't say that to a man. He said it to a woman. If you can keep it. It's everyone's responsibility. Man, woman, old, young, smart, dumb. We all have a responsibility. You know, and we got that opportunity because shit hits the fan, or shit had hit the fan, because of the abuse. We're seeing a very abusive system now. And we're going to see shit hitting the fan, and it won't be the same type of revolution, but we could see a change in the government we get. And the type of government we get and the mentality that comes out of it is going to be largely determined by the quality of the people that put it together. And I don't believe, sadly, that they're going to have a good understanding of common law, natural law, God's law, individual rights. I think we're probably going to end up with a government that is more akin to something that they have in Europe, where they will set limits, hard limits to start, and then we'll play the game again. As for me, I think I've done my time. Anyways, chance favors the prepared mind. Is yours. I want to thank you all. God bless you all. Godspeed to all. God bless America. And I just wanted to throw a bunch of gods out there because I think it irritates some people. And I don't mean to be inflammatory. I just, you know, I don't think it's right to attack people who have faith when faith is what has gotten us so far. And I don't think it's right of people of faith to attack other people who choose to be agnostic or atheistic and condemn them and attack them. I think people should respect people's individual rights. The original framers of the Constitution created a deist document, that is a belief in God, and not a prescription for any one faith, including a faith in no God. You know, it's a very interesting world. And if you don't restrain people and restrain institutions, they will become abusive. That's why we're restrained against one another. That is, we are not allowed to commit crimes against one another, because unrestrained results in, right, bad characters. And government, being the powerful instrument it is, if not restrained, becomes incredibly abusive very quickly. And we all know how that plays out, whether dealing with bureaucracy, elected officials, law enforcement, judges, etc. Government is very powerful, like fire, right? It's a useful servant and a terrible master. Thank you, I believe, George Washington, for that one. Semper Fi. I'll talk to you soon.